Respectfully acknowledges. All right, the town of Hinton respectfully acknowledges that it's located on the First Peoples traditional lands. We recognize this traditional territory to show respect and understanding to those who walk this land since time immemorial. Today, we uphold our ongoing responsibility to work together in the spirit of the intent of the treaties with the First Peoples and nations that call this place home. The town expresses gratitude for the opportunity to build a better community on these sacred lands for generations to come. And with that, I call the meeting to order at 4 p.m. Can I get a motion for the acceptance of the agenda? I'll move very much. Sure. Thank you. All in favor? Adopted. Next item is citizens minute with council, and I know we do have one for sure. So if you could step forward, give us your name.
Do it from here.
Sure.
Okay.
Give us your name and what you're here about.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Natalie Charlton, and I am the Executive Director at the Hinton and District Chamber of Commerce. And I'm here this evening to let you know that after several calls from concerned parade participants, we've had to make a difficult decision, and that is to postpone the parade until next Friday. We've checked on several weather sites, and the weather is varying between -28 and 31. The wind chill factor, and we're concerned about the safety of the participants and the citizens. So we're asking that the town of Hinton perhaps support us in the communicating to the community, just to let them know that the parade is being postponed. So again, we know that it's difficult for some people that have put a lot of work into their floats, and we're anticipating to go out on Friday night, but it's more of a safety concern right now. So we are postponing until next Friday and asking that you would help sharing the communications to the community. We put it out on Facebook. We've had over 70 shares this afternoon, messaging going out to the membership. But again, if we could have some messaging maybe on the town of Hinton website, it would be great. And I'd be happy to reach out to the communications. And that's what I've got for you.
Thank you. So we're talking Friday, December 9th.
Yes, is the new date. Yeah.
Okay.
Same time, same place.
So administration, we can get to communications and ensure that that's done.
Yeah, I'm emailing them right now to reach out to you, Natalie.
All right, thank you. Charles. Any other anyone else would like a minute with council? Anyone online, Jen?
No, there's not.
All right, well, our next order of business then would be delegations and presentations. None. All right. So then it's down to the meat of the business, and our first action item for today is the review of the capital budget for the town of Hinton, section 5.1. Council, how would you like to tackle this?
Through the chair to members of council, so a little bit of how we were planning on doing this with these having administration kind of guide council through the remaining parking lot items from the last session to discuss the revenue side of the equation and to discuss all of the civic asks, and then at the end possibly a discussion when it comes to strategy and any other changes that may be required prior to bringing it forward to council on December 6th.
All right,
And I'll let Alicia guide the process from here.
I'm going to start. So following the budget workshop on the 18th and 19th of November, administration is before you again this evening with the 2023 draft capital budget, seeking further direction from committee. Firstly, before we start, and Jen, if you want to bring up the I'm not sure what page it is, the large capital sheet. On the screen, I'm not sure if council is requiring that they all have copies. I'm not sure how it works with how many councilmen being on teams with us.
So that'll be page 7 of the agenda. Correct?
Page 9 maybe.
Page 9.
Page 7, okay. So before we get started, if you look on this sheet on about page 16, or sorry, line 16, it says carry forward wildland sprinkler. Please strike that from the document. That should not have been carried forward, and that will change the carry forward total for 2022 to be $1,678,081. My apologies for that oversight. So from our meeting, there were 2 items that were put on the parking lot list. One was the guardrail on both Wyandee Avenue and West River Road, as well as the RCMP stormwater management. And I see Mr. Ruffel's here to take us through those. Yes.
If I could, and through the chair, because we do have a staff member here that does need to get going. If we would be able to bumper up in line just to discuss the one item on the operating side prior to getting into capital infrastructure, that would work.
Sure.
Yeah, so this will be paid for health and safety works.
I hope and safety awareness.
So this will be for health and safety parking lot items.
What's the page?
Everyone found that in a month before Ms. Ross gets started on her presentation. I do need to apologize. This was omitted from the budget worksheet package, and that was an oversight on my part, not on the health and safety department. So has everyone found that page?
Page what? 59. 5960.
Oh, pass that along to Angela.
Thank you, Jordan.
Thank you, Chair, through to council. I'm here today before you to bring another operational business case in regards to health and safety. In the past year, the Joint Health and Safety Committee, who's worked diligently with our organization to bring awareness to health and safety, has created a safety recognition program. And through the recognition program, what that's brought forward is identifying leaders in health and safety through our organization. In the past budget, we had some surplus in training due to COVID, and we utilized those funds to purchase some items to help award those health and safety leaders for the organization. Through the safety recognition program, we've had 4 quarterly draws that have happened within the past year, recognizing and notifying the organization of those strengths. Nominations have been brought forward. Moving forward into 2023, the Health and Safety and Joint Health and Safety Committee is looking for $7,000 to bring forward to help fund Work Hub rewards. So currently we use Work Hub through the Town of Hinton electronic database for our training, for certificate profiles, and then also for document review and compliance. And what we're looking for is $7,000 to fund the reward system. Currently it's locked right now, but once we open it up, it will allow points to be awarded for those individuals that receive, I guess, go in and receive some training if it's online, or they put their certificates in, or they review documents for compliance within the organization. So to help us bring forward the initiative, we are looking for a $7,000 ask for the next year to support, and that would be ongoing for current years thereafter. The system is very nice. We've had some items come back through WorkHub. We've had jackets, toques with our logos been put on it, and the items that have been received are in very good quality. And what it will allow us staff to do is bank their points, and then they can purchase certain items for recognition through the store. There's anywhere from toys to barbecues to tools to toothbrushes to tickets, that sort of thing. So as they work harder in WorkHub, they will gain more points. They can bank them, in which they have a certain amount of points, then they can go shopping within the rewards program. That's it.
Thank you.
Any questions, council? Councilor Ross?
Thank you, Ms. Ross. I guess the question I have, and this is to administration, not to Ms. Ross, but if I recall, there's a budget line item that is staff. And I can't remember the name of it, but where we take the budget for parties, we take some budget for other things, barbecues, stuff like that. If I recall, is that staff recognition fund?
There is a line item.
Yeah.
Is that line item still part of the budget currently?
There is, off the top of my head, it's not funded much more than about $2,500.
Oh, that's,
And it was used for long-term, like predominantly when we looked at it, in preparing, it was used predominantly for like the 5, 10, 15-year service awards as people reach those milestones.
okay.
I believe the parties are funded proportionately through the departments.
Okay, and the reason the train of thought, I thought it was more than that, because I wasn't sure if maybe that could be, this could be under that budget, but by the sound of it. So thank you, administration.
Councilor Taylor?
I have a broader question. The broader question is. We're spending, looks like $60,000 to $99,000 extra on requests for your department. Including this one. What can we expect to see in return, short and long term? We expect to see from these programs in terms of reduced WCB premiums and payouts. That's quite an expenditure, and I think the taxpayers are going to expect me to have an answer to that question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, to the council. CAO and myself had a conversation regarding compliance software, and I'll let Jordan, do you want to kind of speak on that one? With regards to calling the compliance management software to 2024. I think for next year, what we're looking at, that one had a budget of $26,250. We're looking at pulling that and doing it internally, getting our systems created within the organization, and we feel we can do that without having the software in place. So moving forward, we would reduce our budgets by the $26,250. Okay. With respect to psychological health and safety, that was also put on, I guess, the burner right now, just for the meantime, and that's $18,900. So that's a reduction in health and safety's budget as well. In terms of moving forward, this is what we're looking at, is helping build culture within the organization. And so the culture in terms of health and safety is derived from our leadership, from top down, from CAO. As culture improves, more training is brought forward, more alignment in terms of directives, procedures, and how the organization's expectations are noted within. That's where we're looking to see a reduction in WCB claim costs. Okay, so with that in mind, psychological health and safety to injuries to illnesses, we're looking at incentivizing, providing more training, and getting our leadership on board at all levels so that we can see a reduction in those claim costs. With this specific request, we are also requesting that I spoke with Alicia, Corporate Services, regarding line items. Each year we receive a reduction in a rebate for WCB premiums. For the past few years, we received I guess, 2019, $119 to 20, we received a $6,800 rebate. For 2021, it was $7,400. With those rebates, we're looking at putting that into a GL code where we're showing that there's revenue. And that would help fund this program for incentives so that we're not actually pulling from taxpayers' dollars in terms of revenue. Okay, so the only problem with the WCB rebates is we're not aware of what we're receiving each year. It's really dependent. With WCB, we're always on a 3-year lag. So that means if we have injuries in 2017, 2020 is typically when we'll start to see those claim costs, or not claim costs, but the WCB premiums increase. And then it takes us a few years to get ourselves back on track. But because we've seen, we had our lowest number received in terms of a rebate, 2019 of $119, where 2013, there was an increase of 24, and it ranges from anywhere from, $5,000 to $40,000 over the last 10 years. Okay, so we're looking to see whether or not we can fund some of these programs, get our leaders back on track, utilizing the modified work program, and having those workers come back to work, working in various departments, providing support within, as opposed to using, claim costs and having those claim costs increase.
So maybe just add on to that a little bit, if I could, Chair. Everything that we're doing in health and safety, it should have an effect on our WCB premiums. Not to mention the costs that may come along with, lost time for injured workers, all of those types of things. But what we're trying to do here, and this is just really a fun reward system to try to get staff engaged, which is really half the battle when it comes to health and safety, is having people engaged in the system in order to kind of progress it along. But I can't say for certain what financial impacts this will have, but we are hoping that everything that we do in health and safety, just generally or globally, is going to ultimately affect those WCB premiums and affect any financial impacts that may come along with lost time and things like that. But we don't have an accurate return on what those investments will look like.
That's good follow-up.
Yes,
So are premiums in comparison to surrounding towns high, low?
We're middle
And
ground.
payouts, we payouts,
Pardon me?
and their payout, like we have premiums and we have payouts, are we high, low?
But to give you an example, our premium industry rates, so PIR, Partners in Injury Reduction. For industry, just to give you an example, last 3 years, 1.38, 1.56, 1.60. That's municipality rates per $100. Our rates, we saw a reduction, and we were at for 2019, 55 cents to 130 to 154. So we are generally below industry average for municipalities, which is a good thing. That means we're doing what we should be doing.
And you also said that you pulled the funding for 2 of the projects that were originally listed.
That is correct.
Okay, thanks.
If I could, just on the compliance management, that is another parking lot items. We could, if you want to conclude this one, we could talk about it after, if you prefer that, Chair.
why don't we, when we're coming to it, we can address it at that point.
Great.
And before we go on, can you hear okay, Councillor McGowan? All right, Councillor Haas.
Yeah, I'd like to see consensus to include the request to fund safety recognition program, if I could speak to it, please. I struggled with the 18.9. I wanted to do it when we had the first discussion, because I think it's a good initiative, but I think that can be done in other ways. This is an opportunity. It's a smaller amount, and it's an opportunity to give back to our employees, to administration, and that hub system has been quite successful in getting people there. So I think this is a great initiative. It goes, evidence-based, a happy, and safe worker produces more. They give more and produce more too. So I think this goes to, there is no monetary necessarily amount. We can set to this, but overall, I see this improving that culture. So I hope the rest of council feels the same and will approve of this consensus. So thank you.
I'll maybe put myself into line, and I guess when I hear toques and toothpaste or toothbrushes, I go, you can buy a lot of toques and toothbrushes with $7,000. Sort of how many employees do you feel sort of would benefit, receive something out of this program?
Thank you, Chair, and Committee Council. So each of the individuals will be capped at a certain amount of points per year. And they'll receive a point, or however we allocate points for reviewing items, for example. Once they receive those points, they'll go into a bank and they'll start to accumulate them. Once they receive, there's anywhere from purchase something for 70 points up to 1,000 points. So it's really dependent on what their needs are and what their wants are. So essentially I'm assuming most individuals within the organization will start banking their points until they gather enough, until there's an item that is on their wish list. They need a new lawnmower or maybe a power drill, right? And there's all those items in the store. There are organizations out there similar, RBC uses a very similar program to generate incentives for individuals to utilize online training and compliance items. So I really can't say how many will use it, but I think majority of them will, when there's free stuff being provided to them, when they actually have a choice, similar to your Air Miles rewards programs. You can go in and purchase a ticket to go to a game, or, to toothpaste if you wish.
So there are bigger items. I
Very
guess that
much.
was okay. Thank you.
Very
Councilor Reyes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So my question, I know, will correlate with what we're talking about right now. The sessions that you had at Lincoln Center, one of them that I attended, that was absolutely awesome. And then the online sessions that you conduct. Did you see or hear really positive responses within our organization?
Yes, thank you, Chair, through the council. Yes, we did. We found a lot of individuals found that training invaluable. There was a lot of individuals that had an opportunity to check in with themselves, self-advocate for themselves, and bring forward. And I think our leaders can speak more to that than myself, but the feedback I've received has been positive. Moving our organization in 2023, we're looking at 2 individuals to go through training to become psychological health and safety facilitator certified trainers that will then help build the framework within the organization to move this organization to meet the CSA standard when it comes to psychological health and safety. So next year will be a bit of a building block year for us. And then the following years will be the implementation side of things. Right now, currently, we're working at the leadership level and we're providing some micro teachings, which I think council's had an opportunity to review and be aware of what we're providing our leadership. And that will continue through into 2023.
So, I think a organization that is mentally and physically able to do the job is such obviously an asset to us. So for what you said, I certainly will support that motion. Thank you.
Did I see a finger waggle?
If
Councillor
nobody
Taylor?
else is going to speak, I could.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think our staff are well compensated. I don't favor the idea of rewarding volunteer staff so they can get lawnmowers and power drills and lower cost promotional items. I've never been in favor of any organization providing staff. I always thought it was not a worthwhile expenditure of taxpayer dollars, particularly in a tight budget. I favor people taking the training. I think they're compensated well, so they should be motivated to take the training. I think we're at that level right now in the organization. Thanks.
Councillor Oz.
Yeah, I guess the other thing that I understood with this is the rebates. If this were, and to look at is if WCP claims go down, the rebates go up, which would also include in funding for this particular. So the fact that we might be saying, okay, the 7,000 this year may not be the same for next year or the following year. And I'm assuming that, administration will take that into account, looking at what the rebate might be, from previous year and then what the ask might be for next year. I guess I beg to differ. I think customer service is something that this council really is part of our strategic plan. And I think this is a small price to pay for also good customer. And I think working towards that, and I agree, compensation is definitely part of it, but there's other ways we can compensate as well, not just monetary, but also that competitiveness that might also be created with this system as well. And competition in a workplace can be very healthy. And I think this is an opportunity to create some of that where we don't have that currently right now. And you don't get that with a monetary salary. You get that in this way. So that's the reason, one of the other reasons that I'm all for this. So thank you.
Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, it's okay to disagree with me, I don't mind. I guess we're brought up different. I'm brought up where you gotta look at the dollars and the cents, and it seems like a small amount, but if you can manage the small amounts well, the big picture items take care of themselves. So that's where I'm at with this. Thanks.
Any other thoughts, comments, questions? Okay, so we have we're looking for a consensus on the request to fund the safety recognition program in the amount of $7,000. All in favor? Opposed?
What was mine?
Councilmember Goon,
I'd raise my hand for in favor.
Right, that passes 4-3. Thank you. So if we could maybe step ahead and thank you, Mr. Ross, and pick up where we left off.
I will just, before I begin, make one correction to Councillor Hawes, if I may. The amount in the awards and recognition line is $8,422. So back to capital.
Back to capital, please.
So the two items on the parking lot list from the capital plan was identified as the Landy Ave and West River Road guardrails, as well as the stormwater management. And I will ask Mr. Russo to take committee through these items one at a time. And at the end, we will be seeking consensus, or administration will be asking for consensus on these items individually.
Thank you.
Council and committee, what it's on the 18th and the 19th, where we did budget deliberations, we talked about this guardrail. There's two sets. One is on Winnie Handy and the other one is on West River Road. What on West River Road wasn't a concern for council. It was more the Winnie Handy one. And I did some further look at this, and I looked at the contours of it just to ensure, because the trees and the grasses that are growing, they kind of gives you an illusion that that's a flat surface. So why the concern? So just the reason for guardrail installation, and there's many reasons why a guardrail gets installed. And I'm just going to mention a few. One is the differential height between the travel distance, between the travel height and to the bottom of the toe, meaning the slope distance. We have about 3 to 4 meter difference in height over a 15 to 20 meter distance down to the bottom. So that suggests to me that that was one of the driving forces why it was installed. The other reason is, if you look at this road configuration, there's not many traffic that goes up there. So the traffic volume often dictates as well when you have a slope that's high, that's quite high and steep. Thus, we don't have the traffic volume, but you don't have to get to the refuge. So often a guardrail is there to guide traffic, one to slow down, and people may determine, even though we don't have a sidewalk behind here, that people may find refuge behind that. I don't see this as a big item either. However, if you look at that, it has been installed. We have set a precedent. If something happens, let's say tonight we decide not to go with this, and this is not a threat, council, this is just based on past experience. If something happens, and I'll give you a two example. One of the areas I've been working in, there was an area where we determined where guardrail wasn't required, the speed limit was low, all these things were in favor. A 16-year-old got a license a couple of weeks before that and decided to leave the road and got killed. And so there was a political wall at the time that council then decided to install. We don't have that scenario here. But I'm just trying to say that should we have a situation where somebody loses the road or misses the corner, that this would be, so in my professional view, I believe that the guardrail should be reinstalled to its location. We could probably get away with a little bit of a shorter distance, just based on my observation. But it would suffice me to say that I cannot say that this could be left as is, because we are aware there was a guardrail, we are aware there's a drop. And we are aware that pedestrians don't have a refuge, so if anybody gets hit by a truck or anything. The guardrail may be their savior because the vehicle can slow down. That's my research that I've done and based on my past experience, and I'm open for questions, Council.
Councillor Haas.
Thank you, Mr. Russo. And that was my question, and maybe you answered it, Barry, but when I look at the distance of it, a lot of that guardrail is a straight, roadway where before the bend, actually. So I guess that was going to be my question, that if we do, go forward and replace it, does it have to be that long? That might reduce some of that costs, I guess the other question to the liability, and I don't disagree with that, but I wonder, we had one there and it obviously in disarray, it wasn't going to be working. If nothing was there, is there more liability that we had one there and it's been in disrepair versus if there isn't anything there?
To check to Councillor Haas, your liability remains the same. Okay, I think your degree of liability increases because you've had a guardrail there. And if something happens today and we don't replace it, that you'd be held to a higher standard.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, to give us something to talk about, I'd like to just get it out there to seek consensus with the road placement for Winnie Avenue and West River Road. And I'm convinced we ask you to go back and give us a second look, and you did, and I'm convinced that the 191 is worthwhile now. I think if you can, you'll make it a little shorter to keep the costs down. I trust you to do that. So that's my take on it.
Can I just get some clarification? I mean, we're not talking about West River Road, right? Like that one has to be done. All we're talking about tonight, those Wynandy. Yes, thank you. Councillor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To administration, are we, what are our options here? Are we gonna continue with wood that after, 10, 15, 20 years starts to rot? And so what is your build proposal?
So through the chair to Councillor Race, these days there's a steel galvanized post that you can drive in. There's the various type of guardrails that we have. The guidelines for Alberta transportation gives us about 4 or 5 options. One is steel post. One is you could use a cable with a steel post. The other one is use the wood post that is now better treated wood. So we would look into the longevity. Personally, I would not want to go with anything that we have to touch for the next 15 to 25 years. And whichever's going to heal that would likely be the choice we go.
I'm sorry, say that again.
I wouldn't want any administration to go back in 15 to 25 years to try and invent this again. This has got to be in there for the life of most of us. So that, and I would look at the best.
What do you say?
Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you.
So maybe I'll just quickly ask then, and this would fund out of reserves, is that correct?
I would turn to my colleague, the finance gurus.
Yes, it would.
Yes,
Thank you. All right, before we move on, any other questions, thoughts? All right, we have a consensus proposal on the table then to include the installation of the Wynandy Road guardrail. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Mr. Councillor Haas.
If I could just ask a quick question that comes to mind. When a guardrail is impacted and needs being replaced afterwards, how does that work? Is that on the town to replace that in the funding? is there any insurance that is involved in that? I'm just curious, because, you know, that West River Road one must have got hit. You know, now and this one as well, but how does that work?
Through to the chair to Councillor Haas, typically what I've seen, and there's various scenarios, the one scenario that would apply to the town of Eaton is that, and I will have to check our insurance, if it's not a listed peril, then it won't be covered. If it's a listed peril within our insurance document, then it could be covered. I doubt whether this is covered. We just recently had the situation with the Sherwood Drive where we had the collapse, and I checked into that, and it wasn't a covered peril. So we would be on the hook. So should somebody hit it, then we will have to replace it as a stop sign would go down and stuff like that.
Go ahead.
Because I guess I have in mind, CEO Panassi brought forward in the budget meeting, the consideration for the future, like fires and insurance. And getting some payback, for those things. I just was curious if guardrails were similar, that it would go through the person's insurance policy potentially, but I'm hearing that's not the case.
Through the chair, I haven't seen that done. I know through the Sherwood example, we did go back to the insurance and ask, okay, so who's liable and all that. And in a motor vehicle accident situation, if I'm at fault, then you can go back to my insurance. We could, in this case, if it's somebody that crashed it because of anything negligent, we could go to them. The chances still is to them to decide whether they want to compensate the town for any losses sustained.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so then the second consensus item would be the completion of the RCMP building stormwater management. If you could step us through that one.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Where we left off on this on the 18th and the 19th, what council wanted to split out, there was a matter of a fence, a safety fence, and there was the stormwater management component. Council sent us back to go and look at where did the whole matter of the fence derive from. And so when I did a bit of digging and through our chief or fire chief, he kindly helped me to give some history on this, that the issue of the fence really never was an issue raised by the RCMP. It was a one-off incident where somebody in an intoxicated state was at the back of the door, and then they just said to him, come in and stay the night. And so they realized that that was a once off, they may have to get a fence or something, but there was never a push from any of the staff sergeants at the time to have a fence. So I think where this come from, council, is that maybe administration that used to be with us, they took this into consideration and talked about a fence. If somebody carried this and said, oh, we need a fence. What I do want to qualify is that the numbers we shared with council that Saturday or Friday evening does not include the fence. That is totally on the stormwater management component.
All right, so I guess we're talking about the $250,000 then to do the stormwater management and drainage. Council, questions, comments? How do you want to deal with this? Councilor Haas?
Yeah, based on what we were shared with on the 18th and 19th, that this is it's not right now, there's a huge situation occurring, sure there are the possibilities, but I would be inclined to make a consensus that we consider this more for 2024, 2025 budget than the 2023 budget right now. And then reassess in a year or so and see where we're at, if things have deteriorated or whatever. So I'm going to move, knowing now too, the fence is not on the table, that would be a completely different ask. Is that my understanding? Okay, so I'm going to move to remove this request for the stormwater from the 2023 budget.
Thank you. Seeing no one, Councilor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, to administration. We're acknowledging that there is significant damage to the parking lot, to the light poles, to power pedestals. what does significant damage mean? And if we put this on hold, what will our future costs be if we allow it to get worse?
To the councillor raise. If we get a storm in 2023, be it a 1 in 10 or 1 in 50, you would sustain damage anywhere in the town because those are severe storms. If we don't do anything in the next year, I don't foresee a catastrophic situation occur. As I said back on the 18th, that we are not close to homes in this area. We are not close to human lives being impacted other than the RCMP members that may have to evacuate their premises. The idea of sandbags could be a remedy under emergency situation. So from a professional standpoint, I would say that we are not at human risk, we're at risk of losing maybe property to some extent. And those are things that can be mitigated through some means, as I've just said. But the reason why I'm also recommending that we could put this off, I'm looking at a greater approach to climate resilience and grants that could help where this could fit in. And that was the driving point for me, Councillor Rice, when I made that recommendation that could go over to a following year or later year.
Good, thank you. Thank you, sir.
Councillor Stanchik.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just quickly, this has been kind of niggling at me since we first started talking about this. And I didn't ask before, but I am going to ask today, what's our risk of liability if there is a major flood and the RCMP station gets flooded? I'm not sure. I know flood insurance is its own very special thing. So I am just a little bit concerned on what our potential liability might be if there is a catastrophic flood that floods the facility.
To the chair, to Councillor Stanchik, our risk could be that we could be held liable for in the event of a catastrophic storm. Now, we are seeing unprecedented flash floods happening. And I haven't seen, and I'm just looking at fellow municipalities where they had similar. They weren't held negligent because of that. Mother Nature's changing course. 200 years ago, she probably did what she's doing now. So we would not be looked at because what will happen is that the channel has been designed for a certain occurrence interval. And so that's part of the design code. Right now, we're saying that because of climate change and contributing stormwater management inflow, we are having a backup effect. And that backup effect, meaning that we have to increase pipe sizes, we can get the water quicker away. And so those are the things we looked at in the design council. So the Councillor Stanchik's question, would we be liable? We would be, there's the court case that goes forward, we will be third party to that because we own the land. And what did we do as a prudent landlord to mitigate certain things under certain circumstances?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So maybe I'll ask my question then. So there's a $35,000 carryover from 2022. What would that do? Like what's the work you're intending to do with that 35,000? And I'm assuming that it's intended to happen this year.
So, Mr. Chair, the rationale that 35 carried forward was based on some engineering works that was done back in 2019, 2020 to look at the issue at hand. So the 35 would complete the design to a tender ready stage.
And is it your intention to do that this year then?
That would be my intention to have it shovel ready because most grants these days require you to have a shovel ready design or at least 80 to 90%, 60% to 80% done.
Thank you. Councillor Rice.
Thank you, sir. So we have a price right now, what it would cost to fix it, and we're doing a carryover because some work, design work has been done. With inflation and all, this price could change by putting it on.
Through the chair to Councillor Rice, yeah, anything is up for grabs in terms of cost escalation these days. However, until we have the design complete and we look at the options that will be best suited for us, we'll know what that number would be. But the 250,000 has been a conservative approach by the engineers that looked at it already. So, I mean, the likelihood of a overage could be, I will not neglect to say that because things are going up and up. I mean, your mobilization cost for a contractor alone is anything between 10,000 per occurrence. Yeah.
Okay,
Hey, Councillor Rice.
I'm good.
Councillor Taylor.
I'm kind of in favor of getting this to like the construction ready stage and then to take advantage of grants in the future that come by. I think we joined that energy program, so we get some of these climate mitigation grants and do it on something that's not needed for immediate priority, but sort of something that's could be done in 2 or 3 years would be perfect for them. So if I joined Councilor Voss and voting with him to put this off for a year or two, would we still go ahead with like the 35,000 and get it design ready, and we just be holding off on the 250,000?
That's good.
Okay, thanks.
Through the chair to members of council, the other thing that we may be able to benefit from is the work that's going to be done at the fire training center, and there's a little bit of work to be done there. So we may be able to piggyback onto the two projects and possibly get a better price just with mobilization. A slightly larger project if we do have to contract those. So
Thank you. Before I call to vote, any other thoughts, comments? All right, so we have a consensus put forward to remove the RCMP building stormwater management and drainage to the extent of $250,000 from the capital budget. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's unanimous. Thank you. And I guess the next order of business is to have a look at the operating budget. But given that we had so many council absences on the weekend, is there any desire to maybe have a look or have any questions as it relates to the items currently on the capital budget side of things? Well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't personally have an appetite to go through them one by one. No, but if there are any outstanding questions for anything that was decided during the budget deliberations, I certainly wouldn't have any opposition to councilors voicing those questions and getting those.
That was my intention. It didn't make any sense to step through it, but I mean, there were people who didn't have the opportunity to ask their questions, and I guess I'll put that forward then. Is if there are any outstanding questions that you have as it relates to the list of capital items, Councilor Ross.
Yeah, and it's related to, thank you, Mr. Chair, related just to make sure and clarify with administration on the snow blower. Because I realized there was a time, you know, kind of getting moving on this as quickly as possible. Is administration still confident that enough work can be done ahead of time before accepting the capital budget? You know, so that we don't delay the purchasing of the snow blower?
I could possibly answer that. I'm confident that we can, once the budget is approved. I mean, a lot of the work when it comes to developing the specs. They'll simply need to be revisited because the last time we bought a snow blower was by the look of that machine, it's been quite a while. So revisiting those specs, and then, you know, there's nothing to say that we can't go out for tender. Understanding that there's a lot of political will, so we can start the procurement process, knowing that in January, say early January, we can actually award the tender. So I'm confident that that process does take some time.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilor Taylor.
Yeah. I just have a kind of question. We're on capital, right?
Correct.
Okay. When I look at an arena speaker, robotic lawn care system, and magic carpet lift thing, they're all listed as yes. I looked at that and I was kind of surprised. I saw it as yes, because the way I interpreted what we did. Not saying yes is the wrong interpretation, but the way I interpreted it, what we did was possibly it's going to come back for some sort of decision. Yes, in the future, it's going to come back as a request for a decision. So I saw it as a maybe, not a yes or not a no. Is that correct?
I think.
Yep.
Through the chair to all of council, administration wrote those exact types of notes on the side of this, the long budget sheet under comment. And definitely look to all of you for any further direction, anything that wasn't captured appropriately. I do recall a number of discussions that if it's not listed on the budget, then there's no ability for administration to be working on these projects. And
Oh, there, oh, yeah, sure.
and so to have them on the budget, but there's a requirement to have an RFD go back, or there was some pertinent information added there in the comments. So I would look to, and I see Miss Davy Campbell has it up on the screen as well for those. So if there's any inconsistencies or anything that administration has captured incorrectly from the intent, I would appreciate it being brought forward this evening, so we make those corrections.
My assumption is correct. It's kind of a maybe, and it'll be coming back to request for decision where. Based on the merits at the time, it can be, we can say yes or no.
Yeah. And
Okay, that's
if I
fine.
may, so as an example, under the arena speakers, we have test placement of speakers utilizing current inventory, RFD to come to council prior to purchasing new items.
Sure. Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Oh, you good, Councillor Taylor?
Yeah, just wanted to understand, yes.
Administration?
Thank you to the chair. Sorry, just to go back to the guardrail, I'm not sure if we actually voted to have a consensus on that item. I could be mistaken.
We did, yep,
We did.
it was approved, unanimous.
My mistake.
We love that deal. Okay, I have a question then. So, highway beautification on page 6. Calls for 40,000 and on page 7 calls for 53,000. So is it 40 or is it 53,000?
So in the note that I have on the long sheet, we had, I'm sorry, through the chair to all of council, my apologies. It is at 53,000, confirm that amount from the RFD, so that would have been my typo on the original, because the original capital project plan that came forward listed it at 53.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, thoughts?
Mr. Chair, sorry, which line item was that on the big spreadsheet?
There's somewhere.
117. Oh, yeah, near, yeah, 117.
117, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to see the note.
All right, any other comments, thoughts? So before we move on, then, do we, I guess this is set now, we've sort of got a consensus on each of these line items and we're ready to move forward, or are you comfortable then, administration?
Yeah, to the chair, to members of council, we're comfortable to move forward. Once again, these will be tabled again and on December 6th for any comments, or if we want to go back on any particular item, we can have those conversations as well. But if I believe that all of the items have been agreed to through consensus for this point in time.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Barboa, then I guess our next item is the operating budget 5.2, and you're going to walk us through that as well.
Thank you. Yes, I will. But first, before we move into the operating budget, I was wanting to take a few moments. I had some information on revenues prepared for the weekend workshop. That time was a little precious for that weekend, so I opted to put it through for tonight. Ms. Davy Campbell has a composition of what our internal or our revenues are for the municipality. Kind of bring that forward.
On your slide?
Yeah, so the first slide there, please.
Can you see that, Councillor McGoon?
No.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, actually, I can't. I was just having a look. I can only see it sort of, there we go. Yes, now I can. Thank you.
All right. Go
So
ahead.
the first slide, oh, thank you. So the first slide gives you a composition of our revenues for the town of Hinton. And to put some context into the percentages, so this chart represents approximately $28 million worth of revenue. 48% of that being driven through municipal taxation, or approximately 13 million. Our I have some other notes here, so, and then if we can go to the next slide. So from the tax composition of 48%, it's broke down into these three categories for the residential farmland, non-residential, and the machinery and equipment. So approximately 48% of our taxation is driven from the municipal sector. And the next slide is a snapshot from your 2022 tax rate bylaw, just to put some dollars behind those percentages. So this is essentially when we're talking about the tax rate and generating the revenue. There's a 1.69 cent difference between our residential tax rate and our non-residential tax rate. And I just wanted to give this as a glimpse. We're talking some pretty big numbers when we go through, and I just wanted to make sure that we can have the same context going into it. Any questions so far? No?
Councillor Race?
Thank you, sir. I just want to be clear on this. We used to talk mill rate, now we talk tax rate. What is it? Tax rate is mill rate.
Correct.
Good.
Councillor Taylor?
What's Fraser, what's their percentage of contribution to our taxes? Roughly.
Through the chair to all council, they are a significant ratepayer. I do not have the exact number, but I do believe it is in excess of $2 million per year. They would be a combination of part of the machinery and equipment and part of the non-residential.
Yep. Anyone else? Go ahead.
And then the next slide, if you could please. So from the first graph, maybe let's flip back. I'll do this in that section. So you can go back to the first donut graph there for me, please, Jen. So I wanted to bring up the municipal grant section. So that area that's showing the 14% green. And then the next slide that we're going to go to is going to give a breakdown of what we consider to be municipal grants. So down to where we were. Thanks, Jen. So under that line, we have our, that line item in your budget is approximately $4 million, just over $4 million. And the composition of that is about 960,000 of it comes from provincial grants. So our FCSS, our operating grants for Discovery Camp, and some of our other programs that are ran down through there. About 600,000 of that $4 million line is our cost share with Yellowhead County for fire services, recreation, FCSS, library. And the remaining is our revenue sharing agreement with Yellowhead County, which makes up about 61% or 2.4 million of that line item in our operating budget. So I just wanted, because I know there's been a lot of conversation on grants and what those lines are, I just wanted to take the opportunity to break this down a little bit more.
Can I just ask a quick question there then? Can you give me some definitional breakdown then of how that differentiates between revenue sharing and cost sharing? Cost sharing is directly on facility, and revenue is we get a percentage of what they raise. Is that how it works?
Through the chair to all council, there was an agreement signed in 2015. In 2015 with Yellowhead County, and they included revenue sharing. So on, I believe it is most of their linear properties, so they run through Yellowhead County, but people from Yellowhead County use our services, or
Okay.
So that is an agreement that is in place until 2029, but there is an escape clause, so with 2 years notice that could end. And
Yeah, through the chair, just to maybe piggyback onto that. The revenue sharing agreement is based on a percentage of their linear tax. The cost sharing agreements, the numerous ones that we do have, they're actually pinpointed to specific services. And typically they're deficit funded on a percentage basis based on what we've agreed to at the time, but it's for specific services.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Does that make us to the end of the presentation?
That's pretty much it. The other slide is someone piggybacking onto my low revenue. So that's all I wanted to share with committee is just the composition of revenue for the town of Hinton and bring that up to the forefront as we finalize on the operating budget discussion. So we had with the six.
Before we move on, I mean, I find that pretty interesting. Can you send that out to council just so we have it? Thank you. Go ahead.
So we had 6 items on the parking lot for the operating budget when we ended the workshop on the weekend. We have spoken about the Health and Safety Award Program and Work Hub. And the next item that we have a staff member here to present on is the position evaluation, which will be presented by Ms. Nikki from our HR department.
That's the last slide. Thank you very much. So properly conducted job or position evaluation, those terms are used interchangeably, does have some significant advantages that are listed in the OBC. But to summarize, it doesn't enable centralized control of compensation costs and prevents jobs from being over or underpaid. It links pay levels to the importance or value of the jobs organization. It's a systematic way to promote equitable pay within an organization. And because it's based on job descriptions, it helps keep them up to date, which provides assurances that important tasks are managed and allows for the creation of key performance indicators for performance reviews. And a job evaluation provides a systematic way to determine pay for new jobs. So in the current pay principle policy, it says that we're going to ensure that we compensate our employees properly by external measures and internal measures. The external measure is the market compensation survey, which we completed in 2022. And that benchmarked 54% of our non-unionized positions and 46% of our unionized positions. And is strictly an external wage comparison, which basically compares the benchmark town wages against municipal comparator to ensure wages are adequate to attract and retain qualified employees. On the other hand, a position evaluation, which we've not completed for 15 or more years, looks specifically at internal roles and responsibilities. So we have 74 job descriptions at the town. So for this first go, I'd be looking at the majority of those 74 job descriptions. And what it does is it creates a point system. So you look at each job description and you assign points to each job description. And then it ranks the positions according to their contribution to town goals. And positions with similar scores should be grouped together and paid at the same rate. So to kind of put this into an example, so at the town, we have coordinator roles. There's 10 coordinator positions. Some of them are unionized, some of them are not unionized. Out of those 10 coordinator positions, we have 12 employees who work in them. And 7 of those positions we were able to benchmark for the municipal comparators, but 3 of them we couldn't find any role that was really similar. So position of and out of those 10 coordinator positions, we have 5 different hourly rates paid. So we would look at those coordinator positions, benchmark them against each other, and probably benchmark them against advisor or assistants. And we would ensure that this compensation rate that they receive is appropriate. right? And then you go to the employees that work and you say, yeah, this coordinator might make more money than you, or might make less money than you, but it's appropriate due to these factors, the work that you perform. So that's essentially the difference between the two processes. And I'm here for any questions if you have them.
Council. Councilor Stashik.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Seek consensus of committee to include the 02-09-00 position evaluation OBC in the 2023 operating budget. Speak to it quickly.
Please.
I think it's important that the organization has a full and robust knowledge of fair pay and equity for everybody that works here. I think this is a good step to ensuring that, and could realize some savings or potentially changes down the road. So I'm supporting it. Thank you.
Councilor Taylor.
Yeah, these 74, give me an understanding of whether the 18,000 or whatever the amount is too much or too little. How many of these 74 positions are you say, ambiguous? Like some of them are straightforward, like you've got this job, you're a bus driver. That's pretty straightforward. Some are more ambiguous than that. Not all 74 jobs can't be, you know what I'm saying? Difficult to figure out where they fit in the organization. It's got to be a certain percentage that are more so than others.
We do have distinct job descriptions for all 74, so we're aware of what the roles and responsibilities that they have all done. They're all really well defined as separate roles. Through this market salary review, it did indicate that most of them should be properly compensated when you look at the external factors, but there were a few that they flagged that didn't really maybe fit with the group, but it was outside their scope, right? So they said, maybe we should look at these. So with the amount of money that I'm asking for, I want to do holistic in as many positions as we possibly could to have a full baseline. So any future position evaluations would be very narrow in scope and potentially done.
Okay, thank you.
Council. All right, well, we do have a consensus on the table to include the position evaluation in the 2023 budget. All in favor? It's unanimous. For the next operational business case, I understand it's Bellamy purchase order module we're trading.
Through the chair to all council, that is a effect of double-sided copying when we.
Okay, so I thought that was done actually.
So that one was included. So we have left the COLA calculation for non-union, the discussion on software compliance management, and the new temporary project management position. And I will invite CEO Tanasic to walk council through each of those, and if at the end of the discussion and have consensus on those three individually, it would be appreciated.
Mr. Chair, is it possible to go through them one at a time rather than all of them and then go back and do questions?
Yes.
I would prefer that. I'm not sure what the rest of council thinks, but.
Yes.
Through the chair, that was how it was set up. I just thought rather than introduce him 3 times. My apologies.
So through the chair, the members of council, when it comes to the cost of living adjustment, we spoke a little bit of at the first budget workshop when it comes to possibly putting this in the parking lot. We've had our discussion when it comes to a more fulsome picture of compensation practices at the town of Hinton. We can certainly continue on that road. But I think what I'll recommend today is that we could include that in the budget as a 2%. With the understanding that regardless of the percentage increase or decrease, we're not going to be losing any ground. With all of our comparators looking at coming in significantly higher than a 2% increase. I do believe that, you know, just because we do want to place a fulsome budget on the with council on December 6th, if we can include that, even if it is just a placeholder until we have that fulsome discussion. That would be my preference, but we would, given the timing of everything and as it comes forward, we think that we can accommodate both. On December 13th, we do intend on tabling, and actually we're ready to go for December 13th to actually table a more fulsome discussion. So as long as we can have that in the budget as a placeholder, I think we would be comfortable. Throughout our conversations on the 13th about compensation practices, if council feels the need to make an adjustment to that, then we can certainly have that discussion then.
Can I get some clarity then? We're talking about a placeholder of 119,347. That's
That's
and that would be a 2% increase for every non-unionized employee. in town.
Non-unionized employees, that's correct.
Council? Taylor? Councilor Taylor?
The suggestion is just to have it as a placeholder until we can have the December 13th discussion.
That's correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine.
Councilor Ross?
I'll move to see consensus to include the COLA calculation non-union at $119,347 for the 2023 budget. And I'm not gonna speak, we're gonna discuss it further. This is just simply making sure that it's in the budget. But we're gonna have a future conversation about it with our CEO and HR, and I'm comfortable with that. So thank you.
Councilor Taylor?
That consensus doesn't reflect the words I heard here, though.
Through the
You're,
chair,
you're asking us to vote for a rate increase no matter what, and he's saying, just put it as a placeholder until we have a discussion on that. So they're two separate things to my mind.
I mean. It's going, what I'm hearing is you're asking that we include it in the 2023 budget. But it doesn't mean that we're gonna have that conversation, but you know, it's still gonna be in the 2023 budget. We want to have this in there potentially so that when that conversation comes, we can say that. So unless the administration has other recommendations.
no, through the chair, that's what my preference is, to actually include it in the budget. So that way, when we know relatively what we're looking at on December 6th, because we do want to look at having that increase. But understanding that soon after that, we are going to have a much more fulsome discussion, and if council directs otherwise, then that can simply be adjusted in the budget process. Because that will happen before January.
Councilor Stashik?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In terms of finding a compromise, if it's agreeable, we could potentially do what we've done with some of the other ones and add the phrase subject to RFD of council. If Councillor Haas was amenable to that, I would suggest that as a friendly amendment.
I am definitely. Yeah, I accept that friendly amendment.
Any other thoughts, comments, questions?
Thank you, Mr.
Sir
Chair.
Michaels.
I just wanted to get clarification one more time on what's going to be contributing to a more wholesome conversation. Like, what is the information we're waiting for again?
So through the chair to members of council, what we're gonna be discussing on the 13th is really how we arrive at COLA, how we provide COLA on an equitable basis, and what kind of compensation practices, where do we want to place ourselves in the market when it comes to compensating our staff is really the gist of the policy that's going to come forward.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor
Thank you,
Stashik?
Mr. Chair. Just a quick question for administration. That conversation on the 13th, then we've been informed in the past that there's some wage inequity in the organization. And for lack of better terminology, some people are potentially overpaid for their position experience and some are underpaid. Is that conversation on the 13th gonna address that at all? And does that tie to the COLA increases?
Through the chair, so a lot of the compression issues that the town of Hinton is facing is actually on the union side of the equation, so. I believe that the consensus that was just arrived to with the evaluations is going to inform us on how we address those issues as we go forward. But addressing the individual compression issues will not be discussed on the 13th.
Okay, I'm very.
So I'm sorry.
Yes. It is part of the conversation, so we have a dollar amount that you guys previously saw that will be justice there as well. It's not necessarily included in the COLA, but any of the red circling would impact the COLA immediately.
Great, thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
All right, any other comments, thoughts, Councillor Taylor?
Sorry, I'm still a bit confused. The 13th, we're gonna have a general discussion on the pay levels of the town in relation to the existing practice of a certain standard. That's, thank you.
Okay. Before I move on, any other thoughts, questions, comments? All right, so the consensus is to include the COLA increase conditioned upon an RFP coming back to council on final approval of that. All in favor? Opposed, if any? No, you're good. We're unanimous. Thank you. The next item.
Client software management.
Yeah, so through the chair to members of the council, this was a part that my request with council. I just wanted to get a better understanding of our own processes on how we manage these types of things. This is really related to health and safety and how do we ensure that all of the external agents that come and work for us have all of the things that we need to ensure that they have to reduce our liability. And I do believe that this is a good thing, but I also believe that our processes are lacking, and I think that we can make significant progress in 23 without a software solution. Not to say that this won't make up part of the solution to get us better, but I think that until we have our ducks in a row as administration, until we put in place proper procedures and best practices, I don't think that software is going to solve this problem. So my recommendation would be to push this off and to reconsider it in 24. And I think at that time, administration will have a much better handle on whether this is required or not.
Councillor Sasha.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm fine with pushing it off to 2024. I just had a question though. Is this proprietary software for the town of Hinton, or is this participation in a compliance reporting online software provider like ComplyWorks or something like that?
That's correct.
Sorry?
It's
Okay,
the
thank you.
latter.
So do you want to make a consensus?
Um,
Because we do have a parking lot item.
Sure, I'd like to see consensus of committee to not include software compliance management in the 2023 operating budget.
Any other thoughts, questions? All right, so the consensus then to remove the Councillor Taylor?
Yeah, I agree. And personally speaking, a better understanding of the, health and safety compliance system that we have, and for me, would help me better understand the system, how we do checks in the field, how we keep track of things, whatever procedures we've got, things like that. Just a broad discussion. I'd appreciate that at some point in the future. Thanks.
Okay.
Anyone else? All right, so then the consensus is to remove the software compliance management line item, $26,250 from the 2023 budget. All in favor? Thank you, Ryan. That's unanimous. Next item, please.
Is the temporary project manager position.
Council, thank you for the opportunity to bring this forward again. I know that all of council did not have the opportunity on the 19th on Saturday. We will discuss this. I want to preface this that this is not, and I'm not departing our finance director, it's not a project manager. What this role is meant to be is a project management office that we are seeking to establish within the town of Hinton on a temporary basis, which I suggested could run for the remainder of council's term. Now, what is a project management office and what is its function? Clear and for short. What it does is that it helps you do a lot of preemptive work. It helps you to be more sort of forward facing, and it helps us to serve our community to be ready for any opportunity that may come our way. So I'll just use the example of developers in our town. That is key to wanting to move forward on certain initiatives. Often we are too busy as administration and we do this to the side of our desk and we don't give it the proper, and we miss a golden opportunity or opportunities. Then you have developers that come in to our town and ask very good questions and want to put the roots down, but we are not ready. And so we lose that potential opportunity. And so there are 6 key things to this role, council. One of it is that, if you look at the cost of consulting that we put out there from time to time, much of that cost, I'm not saying we can do without consultants, but could be reduced through this initiative. So if you just take the rec center for argument's sake, that we've done a bunch of work since 2018, there has been quite a bit of costs spent today to the point that, it's astounding numbers. Now, I'm not saying that was for more work, but we still don't have a direction where we're going. So this type of position can help you to have that direction. This does not negate your directors that is currently in place to not be part of this group, because if it's infrastructure director is going to work with this person, then he or she should be given input, understand the pressure requirements, understand the capacity requirements, understand the replacement. For the council that was at the first meeting or the workshop, you saw some of the videos I showed you of the underground. Some of those things, if we had something like this, we probably should have gotten to that stage. This will also help you get grants to go forward. So I think, I'm just going to run through my 6 points. The other point is that if this position ever moves forward, I'd like to engage council to say, okay, let's work together on this through workshops, because you've got a strategic plan that is well thought through, that's got a lot of drop downs in a tactical plan. Who is going to take care of most of those things for you? And working on the side of our desk is just going to talk about the same thing next year this time. That's my personal view. And I use an example of Bhutan lands that we're going through right now. It came at a huge time commitment from administration because we had to pick up a lot of slack that came from other things that went down. And so we're going to get to the finish line, but at the huge cost of time and energy. The PMO brings forward a demonstrated focused implementable solutions that may be enacted in the future over this 3-year term. We can talk about that too. The PMO guides the strategic projects so that the directors and managers are able to execute this going forward through budgeting accordingly, be more accurate in going forward in your budgets in terms of bigger projects. Act as a technical advisory arm to the CEO and council in key meetings, and even represent certain key meetings, be it at the provincial state level, be it at intergovernmental relations or other stakeholder engagements that may visit our town. You've got CNREL, you've got a water plant that needs to be looked after or to be looked at what our next steps would be. And then there's the economic development perspective to this. Not that this takes over an economic development officer's job if council ever elects to go that direction again, but it does help to interface with elements that has a flavor of economic development. Now, I think the bigger question that anyone can beg to say, okay, if you look at the price tag of this, what is the rate how or the success of this, what is the return on investment and stuff like this. In a private sector, the return on investment is simply net profit over the cost of having to invest. We're a public entity, but we don't make profits, and it's in and it goes to repurpose. So the equation that I wrote for this, and I'm not a mathematician, is that return on investment in the public sector will be a rate of project planning, undertaking, and completion over what we invest over these potential 3 years. And I put an end date to this because, as I said to some of the councillors that was at that session that weekend, that if we wanted to put a bridge over the Athabasca River today, over the next 2 to 3 years, you would then assemble a team that will help you to get there. By the time that bridge is built and it's open to the public for use, that PMO dissolves and they go on to their next project. So it's kind of that concept that I've taken. It doesn't negate the clients, people still giving input, driving the process, making sure it stays on budget, on track. And I think there's a thirst in this community, and other communities too can do with this, where you would want to see this type of support, this type of level of expertise in this type of role. So the other part that I want to talk to council about is you're on page 57, and you've seen this at the budget meeting too. I've taken the liberty with my colleague, Ms. Weber, who's not here tonight, the operational business case as to what are some of the roadmaps that we've already identified. In your strategic plan, actually, I just took it out of your strategic plan, not my brainchild. But you've got your business development side of things. You've got your developers that are hungry for information, that wanting to invest in our town, not able to at the speed that's important to them. You've got a lot of infrastructure catch up to do. You've got grants that are not being harnessed properly. And then also rattling the cage of the province to look at us in terms of grant applications. I listened to a podcast over the weekend that spoke about when you submit a grant, it's not done. Your work only begin because you've got to be rattling the cages at the ledge and get known and to get to the top of the pile. So that's part of what I'm suggesting. Then if you look at land development, you've got infill. I mean, we're landlocked in this town. We talked about Crown land, we talked about the Hillary County. We've got brownfields or infills that we could look at. How can that be serviced? We've got the Hinton Golf Course that is great opportunity for us to enhance it even further. Put another EOI process, those type of facilitation with the remainder of the lands be entertained. These are things that we can workshop with council as we go forward. So it's a joint go forward. Now, what's your return on your investment? As I said, is that you'll have constant check-ins with this person. Okay, where are we at? What are the hurdles you're hitting? Why are we not at this point? So with the workshop, we'll flesh out further the strategic plan with a tactical plan that you've reviewed a couple of times now. And then we'll put the priority in place so that when we come to budget time like this, it's not a surprise. We simply said, I've been at the workshop, we've worked through it with administration, and this is where we're at. And then I mentioned the economic development. We were fortunate, we worked on the rural renewal stream. We've got a couple of developers, large developers at our door right now that seem serious. We want to ensure that we're serious about our end, and that takes a dedicated approach as well. Then you've got Bhutan Lands Phase 1 that I briefly talked about. More so, council is probably aware that the CMHC has just opened the floodgates for the next grant intake. And that closes, I think, middle of January, if my dates are correct. So that is where the focus is already for us as administration. And then finally, is to look at solution-based opportunities. There's emerging opportunities that will come during council's tenure. What do we do about that? Do we turn it down because we're too busy or under-resourced or not interested? Probably not. We want to look at it on its merit and then move forward. And with this council, I want to just say finally that this is an outward focused approach. This is not an inward. The director of infrastructure many times, not only speak from other directors, but we have accountabilities such as health and safety, or staffing, mentoring, succession planning. That is what the director of infrastructure should be doing. This role is not going to touch staffing matters, even though it will be a seamless role that will touch every director, because we do need their support and help. And so they need our help as well. Whoever's going to run this. With that, I will stop and be open for questions.
Mr. Oz?
Yeah, I mean, if there are any questions, but I'm going to start off with, I'd like to get consensus to include the senior director of strategic projects to the 2023 budget. And if I could speak to it, sure. Yeah, this was brought to our attention a while back and I was excited when I heard it the first time. I was excited for it, continue to be excited for it. I think the comments that I've had from the public is they like our strategic plan, but is it, is our eyes too big for our stomach kind of thing? Did we bite off more than we can deliver on? And I see this type of position based on what, administration has presented is an investment in that strategic plan and an investment in our community to move it forward. And that's the other criticism that I think sometimes we've had over the years is we've got these ideas, but we don't have the capacity to move them forward, or they move slowly. And we may have missed out on opportunities, possibly, potentially, I don't know. But I think that maybe we may have, and this gives the opportunity for our current directors to work on, the town of Hinton itself and, all the things that we've talked about. And it might mean policies and bylaws and all the things that need to be updated and take some of the load off with this position that can start moving us forward in some of these other initiatives. So I really appreciate, the thought that's gone into this. And I know that based on what you've shared, there's been a lot of thought that is put into this, and specifically looking at our town of Hinton and what we need to move us forward. So yeah, I'm interested to hear what the rest of the council thinks, but I'm full support of this. Thank you.
Yeah, I've stuck myself next in queue, then Councilors Race and Taylor. So there's $203,000 number tied to this, and then it was pointed out that we're not just talking about a director of projects, but we're talking about the creation of an office in a department, and that always makes me nervous. So 203 becomes what by the time we're operating within that kind of an arrangement?
Mr. Chair, so the term PMO does not suggest in this example an office and a group of 5 or 4 people leading this person. This person will pull on the resources that's already existing within the organization. So that's why the 203 ask is simply the full cost of the PMO office. I call it a PMO office because my former life, that's how we think in terms of getting projects done and planned and executed.
Thank you. Councilor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So my question was, what exactly is the name of this position? And I think we kind of got an answer.
That's correct, Councilor Race. I now just go to the business case. This is called Senior Director of Strategic Projects. And again, the rationale behind this wasn't to create a hierarchy in the organization. This position, if it is approved by council, would report directly to the CAO. It is not tied to infrastructure, it's not tied to finance, not to community services, but each directorate has the ability to rely on it based on the strategic initiatives that council drives forward. And the reason it's called senior director is not to outstrip our organization, but is to give it the necessary clout that when we do sit with chief of staffs and we do sit with senior people in other organizations, that they take the town of Hinton serious.
So it's senior director.
Yeah.
Of projects or just senior?
Strategic projects.
Strategic project.
Thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
Councilor Taylor.
Well, I have 2 questions. I don't know if I'll be allowed to ask them both, but what would this position do on projects, say in relation to the other directors? Because what I'm thinking of is some of this stuff like grants or working on projects. All directors have responsibilities in those areas. So what would you do that's different?
So what this would do is that it would go before the grant application is done or before the CEO. This would create the incubator in terms of getting it ready. So let me use an example of the water plant. The requirements of the director of infrastructure is to understand how the water plant operates, what the capital improvement should be. But to make a decision in terms of, are we going to have it on a standalone virgin site? Are we going to have it as a full-on town? That takes some technical knowledge that has to be imparted into that, because Alberta Transportation, for the grant that they may give us, is going to ask you that question. Now, you could either say, well, we're going to get a consultant. That's typically what happens. Now, I'm not saying a consultant is not going to be involved to help us with the design, but there's a lot of that upfront work that will come extrapolated from what we already know, that will be packaged and then sent to Alberta Transportation for an evaluation for the grant approval. So it's almost like a media design that's already been done by in-house and saying, this is what it's going to be, here's our option, bypass, brand new, or we status quo, but this is the capital cost going forward.
Anyone else? Seeing none? Oh,
Thank you, Chair. So I'll just, I'll put my recommendation behind this one as well. Precisely what Councillor Haas had said, I got the exact impression when I read the strategic plan. I think it's a great strategic plan. I think we've identified, the council's done a wonderful job of identifying where we want to be, and staff has developed a tactical plan on how we're going to get there. My reservation is exactly that we don't have the resources in order to do it. You know, we're only looking at one term of council to accomplish these items. Even with this position, I'm not sure. I'm skeptical that we'd be able to get it all done because there's a lot identified there. But I guess, you know, to Winston's point, you know, a tremendous amount of our time is spent on the most important asset we have, which is people, right? So if you don't have people directly underneath you, and you don't have those management and those day-to-day responsibilities, there's a tremendous amount of time that can be freed up in order to focus on what matters and focus on what you can control. And to me, that's what this position is going to do. And if we do want to progress our strategic plan and some of these big items forward in a timely manner, I do think that we need to invest in some resources in order to accomplish that.
thank you. Well, no one else is in line. Councillor Taylor.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I kind of favor the position, but still, being around the block, and seeing this amount of money spent on positions at a lower level and then not being able to see the result of what it's generating. So like in 3 years, in kind of simple terms, what will be a thought, like a water treatment plant that's more fully funded grants, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like what do you think are some of the sort of practical things we can block with this position?
Yeah. So of course, I mean, I don't control the universe, but what I
No.
since I am the
Just asking for an educated guess.
Yeah. No, a good question, Councillor Taylor. The way I've developed this thought process was one, to take your water plant. We should, by the end of 10 years, either we should be starting construction in year 3, or we should have the grants lined up and stacked. And that the province is wholly aware of what our issues are, the water license issue, the threat of West Fraser maybe scaling down. What does that mean? There's the wastewater component to this. It's not just as water. So we should be shovel ready, or we should be able to put the shovel in the ground. And we should be looking at how we're going to finance this whole project. That's the one. That's a big one on its own. Then you've got a rec center that we've done great work on it. And we spent a fair amount of money on that. But we still don't know how we're going to deliver a new one, or we can expand or refurbish. And these are the things that we'd like to have all encapsulated and an action plan attached to it. Then you've got 2 or 3 developers that is kicking it our door right now fairly seriously. They are demanding. CEO Panasic and I just talked about something this afternoon. And well, he said we will support them, and I'm with it. And those are the things. So in 3 years, I'd love to see. Because really, whoever's in this position is going to have to perform year after year. It's not an easy position, I'll say that. And because it's high accountability compared to, you know, other divisions. So I will definitely say that you should see demonstrable outcomes on a milestone basis. So that's why I said workshops with council. And we're all going to put all of our strength and work together. And the heavy lifting, of course, is done by this person. But we want to know that your tactical plan, that you still want to deliver those drop down items. If the direction is, yes, we still want to get to point B, but want a different tactic, then that's what the workshop is gonna yield. It's lovely to put it into a document, but if we don't all commit to it and put the effort into it, I think we're just hot air at this point in time. So it's a big job, it's high accountability, but very doable with all the support that are on the table.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Yes,
So like the regular grant program, we get like $3 million of grants from the provincial or the federal government for the last 5 to 6 years, what I've noticed. We see also that be upped a bit, it's like we'll be taking advantage of extra grants for infrastructure programs. Is that part of this?
Through the chair, if I could help answer that, and Winston, please jump in and feel the need. I would say that that's all part of it, but I would say that council is must be involved in determining what the outcomes they want to be. Because the council says that the most important thing for us is get a infrastructure grant for a water treatment plant, and that's what you should be focusing your time on, then that's where we'll direct this position. But I think council needs to be directly involved in determining what we want to do and what's the most important thing for council to accomplish with this position. So there's going to be a lot of input that we're going to have to see when it comes to this position. And if infrastructure grants are the most important, or water meter strategies, or economic development in a certain area is the most important thing that council believes, and that's where we'll direct that position. So it can be a little bit of a Swiss Army knife in terms of what we can have that person accomplish, but it's all in support of the strategic plan and what's the most important pieces in council's mind with that strategic plan.
Councilor Ross?
Yeah, first of all, I like the Swiss Army analogy. That was good. But and to build on, I think this is the perfect time, honestly, for this as well. We've now got all directors in place. We've got some consistency. We've got our permanent CEO in position. Over the years, what we've seen is a start, stop on projects. And how I see this is to stop that cycle, because we know in municipal government or municipal things happen, and we work on something and then we get routed into something else, and that then gets put on hold, and then we work on something else. I see this position moving forward on those things while the day-to-day stuff is still happening. So I'm excited about this. I really am. I think this is we may have added positions in the past, but I'm not sure if all the strategicness of this was considered in the past, and this one is. I truly believe that this is a strategic position that will be both an investment or payback for customer service outside of our community, bringing in others, and also for the people of our residents as well. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Councilor Race?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say to council that I will support this 100% for every single reason that you pointed out. Why this position is so important. Another thing I want to say is it's hard to be effective if you have to take care of 20 different projects. Each one of our divisions, we have really good people in each division doing maybe 1 or 2 tasks, not 20, and that's why we're successful. So for me here is hiring the right person, making sure the right person applies and get to work. So thank you.
Anyone else? Right, so we do have a consensus on the floor to include the Senior Director of Strategic Projects in the 20. Councilor Taylor.
This would be like a term position, so that would be built into the contract, it'd be like no severance at the end of this, right? That's correct. Oh, thank you.
Before I go on, anyone else? Okay, so we have a consensus to include the Senior Director of Strategic Projects in 2023 budget. All in favor? And that's unanimous. And does that sort of bring the last of the parking lot items?
Through the chair to our council, that is with the exception of the increase on the civic agency asks, and we still have the civic agency to go through. But I do know that a light lunch was arranged for everyone this evening, so I'll leave it to the chair to decide if they want to start
this-
civic agency.
This is probably a logical place to make that break. So let's call a 15-minute break and grab a sandwich and take care of our biological needs, and we'll go together at 6 p.m.